Republicans have spent the better half of the decade, and obviously it's gone longer than this because I believe that's how Democrats and progressives have operated, in that they play the long game. But they've been losing. Republicans have been losing the more cultural battle for longer than 10 years, but certainly over the past decades, and a lot of that is their own doing. Now, we can sit here and talk about the fraud. We can talk about all of these other things that could potentially be taking place. But I do believe there was an opportunity. There's been multiple opportunities for Republicans to win this bad boy by way of a landslide. They completely failed. I think the wrong people was in his ear, the wrong people. And I'm not talking even about the establishment Republicans, the John McCains of the world. That's not even what I'm particularly just talking about. I'm also talking about the people who like to consider themselves like the new conservatives. They get it wrong too. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that the politics, you've heard me mention this before, politics, that's on the downstream, right? Culture starts with everything, right? Or everything rather starts with culture. And meaning that you change the culture, the politics change by default. Now, Trump going into 2016, this being this sort of unorthodox, non-presidential kind of candidate, that was his thing. And I knew that was going to work when it worked then, but I didn't think that was going to work another 4 years. They had a lot of things, if they were going, just considering the trend, they had a lot of things that they had to change and adjust if they were going to maintain the presidential seat, if you will, going into 2020. And all things considered, they dropped the ball. Let's just call it what it is. They freaking dropped the ball. That's all it is. And I spoke in the last videos about the drug war and all those sorts of things, but let's try to break it down sort of bare bones and bare basic stuff. When I talk about culture, I know when you hear like Charlie Kirks of the world and all of them, they use that term culture. You hear the term culture war. What exactly does that mean? Now, I don't know when I say it and they say it. I don't think that it's the same thing, and maybe some crossover, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing. When I personally, though, talk about culture, what I mean is the things that you are basically involved in that are non-political at its base, at its fundamental base. So what I mean by that is every single individual is involved in some sort of subculture, right? Everyone, you, me, we're all. And there may be politics involved in it. You may know the political positions of the people involved in it. But that in itself is not necessarily political. Where conservatives lose and where they will continue to lose is that, and it's the same place where libertarians lose. And that is they act like culture isn't even a damn thing. They act like it's not even a thing. It's more of an afterthought, and everything is about ideas and politics and stuff like that, and that in itself is going to be enough. See, what Democrats were smart enough to do is Democrats played the long game. They got pretty much every control of every sector that you can potentially think of in which you see the actual cultural stuff come into fruition. So whether it be in entertainment, they have that on lock. Sports on lock. They have obviously your public education system. So all these new youngsters, they have that on lock. All of that sort of stuff, which Republicans have either been complicit or they've neglected. That really what has happened is that they latch on to when you see people that are leaving from, let's say, the rather left, and then they try to latch on to that, which is why Republicans didn't know who the hell Lil Pump was. They didn't give a crap. And then Lil Pump said he was going to support Trump. And then they latch on to Lil Pump. It's too late, bro. It's long too late by then. But that's sort of what represents, from a cultural standpoint, what represents how Republicans handle it. Is that they always late to the party. They always late to the party, and Democrats beat them to the punch, and they control the conversation because they played the long game. And now you're starting to see it coming to fruition, and Republicans are in absolute trouble. they're in trouble. They're in trouble because it's not trending the way that they like it to trend anyway, and then they just lost, right? So it's one of those things. If they don't make adjustments, we're talking they gonna hold L's for the really, like, you know, you're talking going into the next years. So where the adjustment needs to be made is you can't have dumbasses like Aubrey Huff going around as an example. I keep using them as an example because I dedicated an entire video about this. Well, Aubrey Huff takes shots. Trump did that too, right? Aubrey Huff takes shots at video gamers, right? That one post, and I'll see if I can pull it up real quick while we're live. Like this, it's an utter, like the fact that they think that this is, well, this is for sure going to win us support. It's like, dude, what are you doing? But let me see it. Let me try to find this real quick. And I want to show you guys just for a point of reference, because it just really, it's the true example of what we have going on now with a lot of conservative commentators and how they handle culture, and they lose and they don't understand why they're losing. It's not that just that it's rigged or just that it's fixed. It goes a lot deeper than that. But let me see if I can find this real quick. Hold on just a second. I'm going to find this because I have to find it. Here it is, right here. Sorry for you guys that are listening to this audio after the fact, but we are looking at a tweet by way of Aubrey Huff. He says, grown-ass men that play video games, ask yourself this: when's the last time you've been laid? Like, and I hear conservatives say dumb shit like this, and I'm sitting here like, I don't know if y'all even want to win. If y'all even want to fucking win, because saying stuff like this is obviously a turnoff to that particular demographic, right? And I'm not just saying this because I'm a video gamer. This sort of speaks to their position kind of on the drug war and how they continue to lose and gets beaten and punched about that. They're still stuck in the fucking 80s, man. They're stuck in they're stuck in the past, right? And they don't understand. They're so culturally inept, and they don't embrace it by any means. And then they wonder why they lose. They wonder why they lose, right? You latch on to everything late. It's controlled by leftists in terms of they control the conversation. So when you see the conservatives embrace people that have more of a cultural, like, let's say, representation, right? It's always the folks that go from leftists and then defect, if you will, and then that's when they latch onto it. You're always late. That's how you are. Instead of embracing the shit along the way, you're late to the party. And that's why you lose. Keep talking about how Republicans had every single opportunity to beat Democrats to the punch in certain policy, or rather certain topics, and they don't. They drag their damn feet. Drug war being the most obvious one. The fact that Donald Trump or any of his not even necessarily supporters, but people that was in his ear, his advisors, could not get him to simply just come out and be like, you know what, we are going to lead the charge for federal decriminalization of drugs, and particularly marijuana. That right there would have changed so much. It's something so easy as that. Doesn't matter if he's successful. It's just you take the position that okay, we recognize the utter failure of the drug war. That was also could have been something that he pinned Joe Biden on. But instead of taking advantage of it, they still stuck in the past, right? They think drug decriminalization equals everybody's going to be a junkie. They think the drug war is still something worth salvaging, and think the drug war is worth something fighting. Okay, go ahead, lose. Like, there's no reason that Trump, he should have been on every chance he got saying, look, we're leading the charge trying to decriminalize drugs. So much support would have went his way, but he's not even thinking in that regards, because there's still like this whole take it to the libs, and they think that that's enough. It's not enough. It was never going to be enough. That was something that you caught lightning in a bottle going into the going into 2016, that he was so unorthodox that worked to his advantage. But now everybody already knows the gimmicks, bro. They already they knew the gimmicks. That was not going to work for another 4 years after the fact, right? Especially when Trump, for the most part, didn't even deliver on all of that shit that he was talking about. So this is why I say that, fraud aside, is there some flaky or funky things going on with the votes and all of that? Of course, potentially, I guess. But the thing is, it shouldn't have been close. Me, Glenn Beck, we talked about this on the Blaze. It's like, dude, if it's close, he's going to lose. Right? He was going to have to win that commandingly if he was going to become president. But he could have. Right? He could have. He just chose not to. Fraud aside. Taking positions, listening to the wrong people. Like those, and I ain't even, again, people think that I'm just referring to the Mitch McConnells and the John McCains of the world. I'm not. There's a new batch of grifter-ass conservative commentators that don't know what the fuck they talking about either. Right? Again, they suffer the same problem that a lot of libertarians suffer. It's the same shit. It's being so culturally inept that you have an inability to read the room. So when you're losing, you think you're winning. Been calling this for I don't know how long. Right? This is why I said that, should Trump have won? Possibly. But I wouldn't have been surprised if Joe Biden won, because there was so many aspects in which the Republicans had been dropping the absolute ball. So you keep being stuck in the 80s. You keep, if you want, losing on a lot of these cultural issues. They're in trouble. And I can't say that enough, how in trouble they actually are. I don't think they actually realize it now. But they're not, they're doing bad. So we'll see what happens going into the next, in 2 years, then 4 years, we'll see. But you better start paying attention, and not just paying attention, more so becoming involved. Stop neglecting culture. This is something I've been lecturing libertarians for the last half decade, publicly, when it comes to my speaking engagements and something, because that's where they lose. They think that ideas are just enough. Well, we got the best ideas. People are listening to us. No, that's not how it works, right? You have the musicians, again, all they try to do is latch on, right? They try to latch on to everybody else's movement. This is why you end up with Joe Jorgensen, for example, trying to latch on to Black Lives Matter, because they don't have no movement of their own, right? And they don't know how to lead in terms of, from the cultural perspective. You don't have to kiss people's ass in order to get them to listen to you. But when you don't have a game plan, that's what you think to do, right? So it's about not neglecting as opposed to just accepting it for what it is. No, it's just about not neglecting that. Conservatives have not existed in virtually any other space outside that's cultural, outside of guns and fucking country music. That's it. That's it. Outside of guns and fucking country music, that's it. You're losing everything entertainment. You're losing everything sports, which is entertainment, essentially. You lose everywhere else. Outside of country and people that like fucking guns, you have zero cultural representation. And you don't even, and it's not even that you don't try to get involved. It's more that you shit on it going back to this, right? Or for those of you who are watching, this. You have people saying like this, stupid shit like this. So, make an adjustment or continue to lose. So it was people like the other day was so mad at me about what I was saying the other day about conservative. This is one of the more dumb things that I've ever heard Eric ever say. Well, you haven't been listening to me, you idiot. Because I have been saying this for I don't know how long. That has been the main reason why I took the route that I took with my music, right? Over the course of the last decade. And then we stick out like a sore thumb, backwards does. We stick out like a sore thumb because we're in a heavily leftist dominated genre. and we just saw a breath of fresh air. Now, where the fuck is everybody else? That's not on me. I'm doing what I gotta do. But everywhere else is a bunch of fucking nerds that think that, oh, well, we just have the ideas. Conservatives suffer the same exact problem. Well, we got the ideas on our side and that's enough. It's not enough. It was never enough. You better start paying attention, culturally embracing that shit, or you will lose going into the next. You're already seeing how your neglect of that, you see how you're losing, right? And how much the leftists actually have control. Because the leftists played the long game. They knew they could get your kids in those indoctrination camps. And much like I talked about, I'm in on this note for this particular segment. And much like I was talking about in the last episode, right? And I discussed how when it came to so culturally inept, conservatives with the whole coronavirus thing, they had the most blatant opportunity that they're probably going to ever have to take an axe to the public educational system, right? Which is where the leftists actually, that's where that molding starts, right? That's where the indoctrination starts. They had a prime chance to do that, and instead of saying, okay, we will reconsider how we fund this, instead of doing that, you had a couple of libertarians that you had a couple of guys over at Cato Institute that were trying to do that, right? For example. But what happened was these fools were sitting here advocating that the damn kids be put back in the camps. They were advocating that the kids be put back in the indoctrination camps, y'all. That's what we're arguing. Well, there's so much that's gonna at stake if we don't get the kids back into schools. And I'm sitting here like, are y'all that so culturally unaware that you have a golden opportunity to take an axe to that system, right? And you just completely botch it. You may never get another chance like that in history. And then you had the teachers unions. You had even, the Democrats were walking. They couldn't do anything other than give you the W here because they don't want to go back to school. And what the conservatives, what they do? They're sitting here standing on their podiums wherever they're at, advocating that the kids be put back into school, talking about the danger if they don't get put back in school. Golly, man, these fools don't get it, man. They don't get it, and they'll lose. Let them lose, though. You know what I'm saying? Y'all consider try to find why you lost. Yes, there's potential fraud and all of that, but blaming the third parties and all of that shit. Nah, that's on y'all, and it's been on y'all for the longest. So you better straighten up and fly right, or you're gonna continue to hold the